Last month, we took a look at some cool British singles released in January 1965. Now it's time to revisit some of the single releases from February of that year. So without further ado, let's begin.
Well, I'm sorry, girl, but I can't stay.
February 1965 saw the release of The Last Time by the Rolling Stones. The song was recorded at RCA Studios in Los Angeles and produced by Andrew Oldham.
Maybe the last time, I don't know. Oh no.
Oldham was assisted by producer Phil Spector, who chose not to be credited on the record. The B-side was Play With Fire.
Well, you've got your diamonds and you've got your pretty clothes.
Play With Fire was credited to Nanka Felge, a pseudonym that the Stones used when tracks were composed by the entire band. This 45 could easily have been released as a double A-side single, because despite being released as a B-side, Play With Fire has also become a well-known classic from that period in the Stones' career.
But don't play with me, 'cause you're playing with fire.
Play With Fire was a song about a young high-society girl and his mother, who owns a block in St. John's Wood.
Your old man took her diamonds and tiaras by the score. Now she's getting her kicks in Stepney, not in Knightsbridge anymore.
The New Musical Express wrote,
"Tremendously gutty sound with a storming thumping beat hallmarks the Rolling Stones' The Last Time, Rush released by Decca today. The strident, vibrant rhythm envelops Mick Jagger's forceful vocal, while the melody is repetitive to the point of hypnosis. But don't get me wrong, these aren't faults, this is merely a clinical analysis. Blended together, it adds up to a sound of shattering impact. Value for money as well, for this track runs over 3.5 minutes. To use Mick Jagger's own words, it's a toe-tapping medium shaker."
The Last Time was the Stones' third single to reach #1 on the UK singles chart, spending 3 weeks at the top, and the single also became a #1 hit in several European countries. In the States, The Last Time peaked at #9 according to Billboard.
You may live on me today, and tomorrow go away.
Apart from managing and producing the Stones, Andrew Oldham also managed a Scottish group called The Poets. The group's first single, a song called Now We're Through, became a top 30 hit in Britain in late 1964.
I can't tell you we're through.
But unfortunately, their later singles were not chart successes outside Scotland. This single from February 1965, however, is one of the best songs they ever wrote.
That's the way it's got to be.
The New Musical Express wrote,
Britain's answer to Phil Spector, Andrew Oldham, has provided a reverberating, walloping backing for the Poets' That's the Way It's Got to Be. A medium-fast shaker, it showcases the lead singer with the other boys chanting. It's got an all-happening sound with tambourine and hand claps.
The single failed to reach the charts, but this track has become a major cult favorite over the years. The song has been featured on many compilations such as the Second Nuggets box set, and later in the early 2000s, the track was also featured on the film Factory Girl, a movie based on the rapid rise and fall of the 1960s underground film star and socialite Edie Sedgwick.
Lovers of the past I'll leave behind. There'll never be another on my mind.
Another artist who worked with Andrew Oldham was the late great Marianne Faithfull, who recently passed away at the age of 78. Come Stay With Me, which was written by American singer-songwriter Jackie DeShannon, was Marianne's third single. At the time, Faithfull was managed by Andrew Oldham's business partner Tony Calder, and the manager got in touch with Jackie DeShannon through future Led Zeppelin leader Jimmy Page, who had just been hired as a staff songwriter for Immediate Records, a record label that Andrew Oldham had just founded. In an interview several years later, Tony Calder explained how the song came to be written. Calder said,
I was in Los Angeles with Jimmy Page, who had an affair with Jackie DeShannon. One night, I couldn't get into a hotel room because Jimmy and Jackie were shagging. So I yelled, "When you've finished, could you write a song for Marianne?" So DeShannon came up with Come and Stay With Me, and She also wrote an album track with Jimmy Page called In My Time of Sorrow.
The single got positive reviews in the press, and Come Stay With Me became one of Marianne Faithfull's biggest hits, reaching number 4 in Britain and remaining in the top 40 for several weeks. February 1965 also saw the release of this solo single by Jimmy Page. The track featured Page playing all the instruments apart from the drums, which were provided by Bobby Graham. And the track also featured Jimmy Page singing lead vocal for the only time in his career, while Jackie DeShannon sang backup.
She made me feel so good, the way she loved me so
The riff of the song was lifted from a Kinks track called Revenge, which was featured on the group's first album. The B-side was an instrumental called Keep Moving. Record Mirror wrote,
Though he's only 19, Jimmy Page has earned the musical respect of the most hardened of session men. He truly is an ace guitarist who has worked with all the top names. He also plays harmonica, percussion, and writes songs, including 8 on a recent trip to the States with Jackie DeShannon. He also likes Indian music and painting. Now, Jimmy sings on record. She Just Satisfies is his first single, out now and released by the Fontana label. Jimmy's a 6-footer, black-haired, and gentle-mannered. A decidedly brilliant young man. Just hope his disc gets the credit it deserves. Jimmy likes Bob Dylan and James Brown and the Famous Flames.
Despite the good reviews, the single failed to chart.
if you don't want me anymore, you better set me free. I just can't continue being to live in misery.
February 1965 also saw the release of the Pretty Things' third single. The A-side was written by guitarist Dick Taylor, along with a couple of friends who weren't in the group. By February 1965, the Pretty Things had already established themselves as one of the wildest and most anarchic rhythm and blues groups in Britain, and this became their last single to reach the top 20 in the UK. The New Musical Express wrote,
An impressive follow-up from the Pretty Things on Fontana. Strident twanging leads into this shattering shaker called Honey I Need, with hand claps and thundering beat. Solo voice merges with the startling sound wall which the boys have created, and there's a lengthy, raucous guitar solo. Personally, I like it better than their previous single, Don't Bring Me Down. It should hit the charts.
The B-side was a group composition called I Can Never Say.
I can never see thoughts which always occupy my mind.
As previously stated, the single became the group's last top 20 hit. Honey I Need peaked at number 13 and remained in the top 40 for 9 weeks.
Golden lights displaying your name. Golden lights, a whole lot of fame.
Another highlight from February 1965 was this single by Twinkle. Golden Lights was written by Twinkle herself, and it was covered by the Smiths later in the 80s. Their version of the song can be found on a couple of compilations by the band. Golden Lights was Twinkle's second single. Her first single, a song called Terry, became a huge hit in late 1964. Terry was one of many records from that period which were referred to by the press as death discs or splatter platters. These death discs usually dealt with topics such as fatal car or motorcycle crashes.
He rode into the night, accelerated his motorbike.
And they often ended with pleas of everlasting love.
Please wait at the gate of heaven for me, Terry.
Many of these songs were banned by radio stations, which only helped increase their appeal to teenagers. From a lyrical point of view, Terry shared similarities with Leader of the Pack by the Shangri-Las, another death disc which was released just a month before the Twinkle single. Terry was banned by the BBC on grounds of taste, and perhaps because of it, the song reached number 4 in Britain and spent a total of 15 weeks on the charts. Golden Lights saw Twinkle moving away from the topic of death discs. Record Mirror wrote,
Eagerly awaited follow-up from the Blonde Star. French horn on the opening, then the vocal sound as before. Story is of a boyfriend who becomes a pop star, and the glory of the Golden Lights makes him change towards our Twinkle. There's a piano section midway, and it's nicely atmospheric. It should be another biggie, for Trouble at All.
Golden Lights failed to reach the success of her first single, but the record still managed to reach a very decent number 21 on the UK charts. Nowadays, Twinkle may be remembered as a flash in the pan, but she still deserves credit for being one of the few British female singers from that period who wrote most of her own songs. On the 21st of May 2015, Twinkle died at 66 on the Isle of Wight after a 5-year battle with cancer.
I'll hold right up and I'll take your hand.
February 1965 also saw the release of the second single by the Artwoods. The Artwoods featured Ronnie Wood's older brother Artwood on lead vocals, and the group also featured future Deep Purple member John Lord on organ.
All right, John.
The group's first single, which was released in October 1964, was a bone-crushing take on this Leadbelly composition called Sweet Mary.
Have you seen it? Sweet honey, tell me, have you seen Marianne? I thought it
This was one of the most aggressive singles released that year. This second single from February 1965 featured the group going for a smoother and more soul-influenced sound. Despite being a good song, the Artwoods weren't satisfied with it because they felt it didn't really represent the more in-your-face rhythm and blues sound that they usually favored. The B-side was a John Lord composition called Big City.
Big city, where I get all my kicks. Big city, with its hotline chicks.
Record Mirror wrote,
One of the best groups in the business, swinging determinedly through a pacey number and injecting plenty of commercial appeal. It just missed a top 50 tip, but the treatment is good enough to score.
The Artwoods enjoyed great success in clubs all over Britain, but this single, just like most of their releases, didn't manage to make the charts. This track by The Searchers, which was originally written by Robert Moseley, was one of the biggest British hits of February 1965. The New Musical Express wrote,
I'm very impressed by the intriguing harmonic blend attained by Chris Curtis and Mike Pender on The Searchers' new one, and their voices need to be flexible, because the word goodbye is spread out to range through 12 different notes. Because of this, it's not a particularly easy song to memorize or join in. All the same, it's an appealing styling with an infectious medium-slow beat and an unusual backing. It should climb reasonably high.
The single became a huge hit, reaching number 4 in the United Kingdom, number 7 in Ireland, and also number 7 on the Dutch charts. In the States, the song stalled at number 52 according to Billboard.
And now, we're going to listen to a B-side by the Rolling Stones, a song called Off the Hook.
Hello, dear, come in.
In the 60s, music changed at an incredibly fast pace, and by February 1965, the music scene was once again changing and evolving. The British rhythm and blues boom that was spearheaded by groups such as the Rolling Stones and the Yardbirds was still going strong. But early 1965 also started seeing the appearance of many mod bands who were going for a more soul-based approach. Whereas the rhythm and blues groups were influenced by the raw and unpolished sounds of artists such as Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and Howlin' Wolf, these new mod bands were influenced by the soul material that was coming out of American labels such as Motown and Atlantic. Most of these mod bands, however, didn't have a horn section, so they usually favored a more stripped-down guitar-based approach to the soul material that influenced them. The Who released their debut single in January 1965, were a prime example of the sort of sound that was starting to take the British scene by storm. February 1965 saw the release of several singles that reflected the sort of mod sounds that could be heard in clubs all over Britain.
Don't break it up now again. No, 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 no.
The The Soul Agents released this excellent Howard and Blakely composition that unfortunately went completely unnoticed. The Soul Agents played in mod clubs all over Britain, and an earlier lineup of the group even featured Rod the Mod on lead vocals. Both sides of the single were excellent, but perhaps the highlight was the B-side. This track, called Gospel Train, was a wild and frantic instrumental that perfectly captured the sort of sound that mod kids, with the aid of Purple Hearts, were dancing to in those so-called all-nighters that were taking place in mod clubs all over the UK. Another band who had a huge mod fan base were the Spencer Davis Group. This was the group's third single. The A-side was a cover of this Brenda Holloway classic that really wasn't a patch on the original. The B-side was much better.
You know it hurts me so, and I never wanted to let you go.
This track was an original by Stevie Winwood, who was still 16 years old at the time. The song highlighted Winwood's remarkable precocious talent.
There's something when you walk, there's something you get, there's something when you talk, there's something about it, there's something when you smile, there's something about every other one.
The Zephyrs were formed in London in the early 60s, but by 1965, the group's sound was already adapting to the new mod sounds that were popular in the club scene. The highlight here was the B-side, a song called There's Something About You. But the A-side was also a good song with some groovy organ sounds.
Bring her back home to me, yeah.
As previously mentioned, however, despite the appearance of all these soul-inspired mod bands on the scene, the rhythm and blues boom was still going strong. And February 1965 also saw the release of several singles by groups who favored this raw and unpolished bluesy type of sound.
Ain't got no good looks, got no manly curl. Ain't got no emerald diamond, got no pearl. But I've got plenty of love, I'm gonna give it all to you.
As you can guess by the name, the Sheffields were formed in Sheffield in the early 60s, and this was their third and last single. The highlight was clearly the B-side, an excellent, frantic, bluesy number. Another very good rhythm and blues single from February was this Howlin' Wolf cover by a group called The Rats.
Been lies about that, so wild about that, some dies without that. That's home.
The tune was also famously covered by Cream later in 1967. Most of these rhythm and blues singles got positive reviews in the press, and some of them have even become minor cult favourites through their appearance on various compilations of obscure British singles from the 60s, but none of them managed to make the charts.
Can't see, I'm gonna need some loving in the meantime. I'm gonna need some catching in the meantime. I'm gonna be a meantime man.
Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames were originally formed in 1961 as the backing band for Billy Fury, but a year later in 1962, Fury's manager dismissed them as he felt they were too jazzy and replaced them with the Tornadoes. At that point, piano player Georgie Fame took over as the group's lead vocalist, and the group enjoyed major success in venues such as the Flamingo Club in Soho, where the group had a 3-year residency. Georgie Fame and company went for a more sophisticated and jazzy approach to rhythm and blues, drawing influences from Booker T and the MGs, but also displaying many influences from jazz artists such as Mose Allison. The group scored a major hit in December 1964 with Yeah Yeah, reaching #1 in Britain and remaining in the top 40 for several weeks.
That's what I said.
This track, called In the Meantime, released in February 1965, was the group's following single. The New Musical Express wrote,
Last week, NME's Alley Cat said that the new Georgie Fame single is sensational. I wouldn't go quite that far, but certainly In the Meantime is a very good disc indeed. The tempo is similar but faster than Yeah Yeah. There's a slight affinity in the melody. The most exciting feature, though, is the tremendous overall feel of the record, with the throbbing rhythm, honking sax and organ building steadily and offsetting Georgie's effortless, relaxed styling.
The single didn't manage to replicate the success of the group's previous 45. The record peaked at number 22 and spent 8 weeks in the top 40.
And now, the latest number one by those charming deviationists, the Rolling Stones.
I hope you enjoyed this trip back to February 1965. See you next time.